and correctly use the product. So we really place a high value on label reviews. And as I said, they're a huge part of any of our risk managers in the branch, their daily, what they do on a day-to-day basis. Um, Also, a couple of things. I don't know, maybe some of you have heard this. We like to try and use this phrase as often as possible. The label is the law. So that's why, again, we try to have the most the best information on a label, to have it as clear as possible, and make sure it complies with FIFRA, the pesticide statute that we follow, as best as possible. Um, and Also, I just want to say that the label has everything on the label at some point is supported by either a risk assessment or data. It may be maybe far removed. It may be just on the active ingredient, for example, but everything that is on the label in terms of the precautionary statements, the directions for use, claims that are made, rates, all of that at somewhere is supported by some type of data that we can point to. So those are a couple things I just wanted to point out before we get started. I think on the agenda, Faye, the first thing that I was going to cover is just a kind of a general, thank you, a general difference between master labels and market labels. So for every EPA product that we register, there is a label that the product has. So every action, every time we register a product, we also issue with that registration a label. We refer to that label as the master label. So that master label is also the label. That's the label that we see, that the reviewers at EPA see. We very rarely will see a finished label or a market label. The label we review is the master label. And on that master label, it includes every single claim, every single use site, every direction, every appropriate or applicable directions for use, everything that the registration, everything the registrant wants to claim about that product has to be included on that master label. Typically, the master labels are just plain labels that have no artwork, have no color, no graphics. They look like they're just someone just sat down and could easily reproduce a label like in Word and use that as the master label. That's perfectly acceptable, and actually that's actually what we're used to seeing most often. So those are the labels that we actually review and accept. And that's what you'll find when you look on our resource, our database for labeling, which I'll talk about a little bit later. That's the type of label that you'll see. So the master label, again, is just a plain version of a label. It's not the label that you're ever going to ever see in the marketplace, in the field. It's the label that has every single marketing statement, every single claim, every single use site, directions for use, appropriate applicable directions for use. All of that is everything is included on the market label. A lot of it will be optional labeling, or especially with marketing claims, the registrant will mark that as optional because, again, they're not going to market the label with 4 pages, to market the product with 4 pages, for example, of marketing claims, which is another typical thing we see with our consumer products. So the market label looks very different. Looks very different. We often don't even see the market label. There is a requirement that once we approve a product, that the market label must be a representative market label must be submitted to EPA before the product is released for shipment and distribution and eventually before it's sold. However, we don't really review those market labels because, again, they are required to be either the exact have only the same material that we approved on the master label, or be a subset of that master label. So I think that's everything on master market labels I wanted to point out. Another thing I just want to point out is that because we only look at master labels and we don't really have it's very difficult for us sometimes to really envision what the market label is going to look like. So when we look at the master label, there are very few. For example, our regulations really have a few requirements on label placement for certain texts and formatting. So it's sometimes we are at a little bit of a disadvantage when we're just because we're only looking at a master label that is going to, again, look very different in the marketplace. And what I'm talking about is mainly things like how are marketing claims emphasized on a market label? It might really change our position on certain marketing claims, how they're emphasized, whether or not they're in the importance that they're given on the market label versus the master labels, things like that. We're at a disadvantage when we're only looking at the master label. So that brings to the next topic, distributor labels. So we issue registrations. It's called under FIFRA Section 3, and we call those registrations primary product registrations. The primary registrant is allowed under FIFRA to establish marketing or business agreements, I guess I should say, not really marketing agreements, but business agreement with supplemental distributors. Supplemental distributors are then able to sell the same product under their company name. The catch is that they can't change anything with the product. It's basically taking the primary product's registration and putting their label with their company name on it. So one thing to point out is that the distributor products, like I said, they have to be exactly the same in terms of formulation. In terms of labeling, they can only have what is on the master label. So it can be, again, a subset of what's approved on the master label. So a lot of companies, especially in the antimicrobial space, they will have one product they register, and their business model is to have 100 more supplemental distributors. So the master label will be sometimes 50, 60 plus pages long, and the distributor labels will be only a subset of that. So the distributor labels, though, I should point out, we don't see a copy of those labels. We don't review a copy of those labels because our regs require very clearly that the distributor products cannot be any different than the master label, cannot have any uses on the master label, any uses on the distributor label that we have not approved already on the master label. So it's not going to look exactly like the master label. Is most likely going to be a subset of the uses on the master label. So an important thing is also, because of that relationship between the primary and the distributor product, we never see those distributor labels. We don't review them. They're not submitted to us for review. We do not see them. The only thing that we have on file is that the primary registrant sends in a form that tells us what the name of the distributor product will be, and also, I guess, also then the EPA registration number, what it will be for that product, because it's the EPA registration number for the primary registrant, adding a third set of numbers, which is the distributor product's company number. So that's just, so I think the takeaway message from distributor labels is that they can only be at the most exactly like the master label or a subset of the uses approved on the master label. And secondly, we, EPA, does not review or approve them. All right. So that said, so Faye, we gave you an example just so you could see an example of what a master label versus a final print market label looks like. So I don't know, Faye, if you can put that on the screen or how you're going to display that.
You want to start with the master label?
Sure, why not? Yeah, let's start with the master because that's the label that we would typically review.
All right, did it change? Can you guys see it now?
I don't see anything on my screen.
Bear with me then. I'm learning something new today. Keep talking.
Well, okay, so back again, I wanted to point out on the master label is this would be a typical example. If you look at our database, PPLS, the pesticide product labeling system, I believe that's what the acronym stands for. That only contains master labels. I just wanted to point out how plain they look. It looks nothing like the market label in terms of, yeah, there it is, exactly. So if you can go down like two pages through, yeah. Okay, so again, so this is a typical master label. We tried to, sorry, we're not endorsing any product. I'm sorry. We tried to get rid of the product name, but we had problems with that because it's a PDF. So anyway, but this is a typical master label. This is what you're going to see if you search our label depository on PPLS. This is what you'll see. This is what we review. Again, it's a very plain, no graphics, no color. Things that are in brackets, for example, are all what the registrant is saying will be optional text, and or just text that will only appear on the master label and will never appear on the master label. So it again it is everything that can be claimed about this product has to be on the master label. All right, and so it is the all-inclusive label that we review, and this is what our reviewers will look at, work with the registrants on, go back and forth on, try to get comments fixed, anything we have questions with, anything we disagree on. This is what we'll be working off of, this label. So if you see this one, it says pages 1 of 19. It's 19 pages long. So there's never going to be, at least for our products, a market label for antimicrobials that a consumer product, for example, that's going to be that long. This label has every single use, every single claim that can be made for that product. That was the point I wanted to make. So maybe, Faye, if you could switch to the market label, the second attachment. And so this is the same product, same registration, but this is the market label example. So and this is the way it looks on the actual product in the marketplace. As you can tell, it's not 19 pages long. There's not 19 pages of text here. It's a much more abbreviated label, a subset of what we've approved on the master label. So I just wanted to point out that it's just a very different label from what we actually review in terms of how it looks, and of course the volume, the amount of text on it, because the market label most likely is just going to be a subset of the master label.
All right.
All right, so I think that was it. So if you can just go back to the agenda, please.
Okay. Can you see it?
No, I can't, but I can talk. So I'm sorry. I can talk a little bit about it. So, okay, thank you. I see it now. So just want to point out some labeling resources if you ever have questions or you want to look at labels. So PPLS, I've already mentioned that. It's the pesticide product labeling system. It has all of our labels for all of our products are included on this database, all the master labels, right? So there are well over 100,000 labels in this database. It includes the labels from when the product was registered, throughout and through through the history, the lifetime of a product. There are often many different label versions. Registrants are always amending their labels. It's very common to amend their labels to add new uses, to add new language, new marketing claims, etc. And every time we review a label and we approve a label, it is placed on PPLS. So you can easily search PPLS using many different fields. The best one, I think, is the easiest one is the registration number, and view the label history, their label approval history for that product. And again, all of those products, all of those labels on PPLS will be master labels, not final printed, not market labels. Another very useful guidance document for any kind of labeling question you have is the LRM, the Label Review Manual. This is something that all of our reviewers use on a daily basis. When review labels, it's divided up into I think 18, 19 chapters. There's quite a few, depending on the subject matter, things like precautionary statements, storage and handling, storage and disposal statements, addresses, directions for use. All of those things are discussed in pretty good detail with references to either guidance documents or PR notice, pesticide registration notices that we use, or the regulations that cover almost all the different typical parts of a label and what needs to be in those, what types of text need to be in those sections of the label, and it's used on a daily basis by our reviewers when they're looking at labels. Even the veterans, even the long timers will often refer to the LRM. So I highly encourage you to use that. If you have a label question, that should probably be one of your first resources that you go to. The last resource I wanted to point out is the labeling Q's and A's. So we have a labeling consistency committee within our office that also pulls in people from our legal counsel and our enforcement office as well. They all sit on this committee. There's through Q's and A's, the website that you are able, the public stakeholders, whoever, they're able to submit questions through this portal, and then the committee will provide answers to those questions. And any question that they think is kind of any benefit that they see in providing an answer to a question, to making it widespread, putting it into public domain, they will actually place it in these Q's and A's. So there's a lot of information there. Again, it's kind of divided up a little bit like the label review manual in terms of subject matter, but it has more specific. It goes beyond just the ins and outs of the label, but there are also questions regarding things like importation of products and things like that. That I think is a really good resource that I don't know how many people are aware of. The one good thing also to point out here is that because it has both, because attorneys also are on the committee, our legal counsel's on the committee, and also our enforcement counterparts, questions are really well vetted, and the answers are well vetted and pretty thorough and robust. So I encourage you to use any of these resources, and of course, you can always consult with us directly if you have a question regarding a specific product that you think we could help you with. And I don't have it on here, but our website has a contact list where you can determine which product manager to contact if you have questions about that product or that chemical in that product. And also any of the letters that accompany any label improvement will have contact information on there for the reviewer who actually worked on that approval. So that's another point of contact for you if you have any questions. So I think that covers the first two parts of the agenda. I'm going to move it over to turn it over to Eric, who will cover agenda item number 3, and then he and I will both try to answer your questions that you had.
Hello, my name's Eric Meterhoff. I'm a product manager in John's branch, as he mentioned, and so I uh, help manage a team of reviewers that look at these labels all day and try and enforce the standards that we have that are defined by the product's data and also our standard parameters for all pesticide labels that are expressed in the LRM and other resources. So I thought we would talk a little bit about the different types of antimicrobial products that are out there. In general terms, antimicrobial pesticide products are products which make claims to control, as the name implies, microbial pests. And so there are all manner of different types of products that can encompass. There can be material preservative products that go into things like textiles and plastics and other manufactured goods to just control pests that could cause staining or discoloration or odor or things of that nature. And those types of pests we consider non-public health pests of concern. But other products, which are more at issue these days, given the current crisis, are the public health products that can actually control public health organisms of concern. And so those organisms have been identified as being potential pathogens to humans. So those are things like E. coli, C. difficile, and other types of microorganisms, and certainly SARS-CoV-2 is the one that most of us are concerned with now. And so when we look at that, evaluating that sort of product, all the things that have been discussed earlier are true in terms of how we evaluate it. It has to be an approved active ingredient for use in a disinfectant. We have to have, for that specific product, acute toxicity data to understand what sort of precautionary labeling will go on the product chemistry data to validate its identity. But the thing that's unique about the public health products is that we also require efficacy data for those to verify that the public health claims are actually true in terms of how the registrant is representing them. And so we have different levels of antimicrobial control, sanitizers and disinfectants. So sanitizers are the lowest level of control for a public health product. They're typically around 99.9% of the organisms controlled will be eliminated by those products. And those products are just limited to making claims against bacteria. Because of the lower level of control, uh, viruses are just reserved for disinfectants in terms of the claims that they can make. And so disinfectants are the higher level antimicrobial public health product, and those are generally around 99.99% control the organisms that they list. And so for both sanitizers and disinfectants, for a product even to be able to say that it's a sanitizer or disinfectant, there are a certain number of base organisms that the efficacy reviewers require the registrant sent in with the application for the product. So these are laboratory studies where the product formulation is used as it's represented on the label. If it's a wipe, then it's wiped onto a surface to control the organisms that are claimed. If it's a spray, it's sprayed onto that surface to simulate how it's actually used to be used in the marketplace. And so after a product has sort of those baseline sanitization or disinfectant claims validated, the registrants can claim any one of a number of different public health organisms. But to do that, they have to send in separate testing with that organism itself for them to be able to claim it on their label. So for instance, if they wanted to make an E. coli claim, they'd have to send us specific laboratory studies to validate that claim, which we would review for that individual product. Um, so where they can make a claim against that organism itself on the actual label. And that sort of leads us into the current situation with SARS-CoV-2, where we don't have any products in the marketplace that actually have claims against that organism itself on it. And the Antimicrobials division sort of anticipated this need, emerging viral pathogen situation. We had a situation a couple of years ago where we had an emerging viral pathogen. We didn't have any products that were able to kill it, and so we needed to be able to respond quickly to be able to say which products could be used against it. And so there was an internal effort to identify products that could kill organisms of the same type as the new one that had been identified. Uh, and so we were then able to put together a list of products that we expected could kill the new organism. Uh, and so to make that a little bit more seamless going forward when the new pathogen comes out, we came up with the Emerging Viral Pathogens program, where a registrant can come in and say, I want to make claims, EVP claims, against a type of virus. There are 3 different types of viruses with varying levels of difficulty to control them. So they might want to make an EVP claim against envelope viruses, for instance. And so they'll say in their package that, all right, I have efficacy data against this envelope virus, and so I think I can qualify for EVP claims against that type of virus if emerging viral pathogen event occurs and there's a new virus that comes into the public sphere that's identified as being of concern, then I can say that my product can work against that. And so that policy has been in place for roughly 4 years. And going into the current situation with SARS-CoV-2, we did have a number of products which had proactively come to us and said that they wanted to be able to make the EVP claims on their labels and sent in the appropriate data to be reviewed. And so those we were almost immediately able to say, um, as soon as SARS-CoV-2 was identified as an emerging viral pathogen, we could say that these types of products could work against it. And that's how the disinfectant list in that's on the website that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with began to be populated with all the different products that are listed there. The first products were the ones that already had these EVP claims, and we're constantly adding new products to it as they come in and have their EVP claims evaluated and approved by the agency. A couple caveats with the EVP claims that are important from a labeling perspective. So on the master labels that John referred to earlier, there's some boilerplate language that is put in place to say that the registrant has successfully qualified for EVP based on them having successful efficacy data against a certain type of virus, like rotavirus, for instance, or something like that. And based on that data, they can, when an EVP threat comes out, make claims against that same type of virus if it becomes an issue. Those claims, though, will not appear on the label itself. They can only appear in web marketing and other types of marketing that are defined in the boilerplate language that goes on the master label. And those are things like brochures that can go to medical professionals and things of that nature. So you won't find any labels in the marketplace right now, which actually on the container itself has SARS-CoV-2, because we haven't actually approved any yet that were tested against the actual organism. So for them to actually have SARS-CoV-2 on the label, they have to send us laboratory test data against that organism itself. So we are starting to get those in, however. We've gotten a large number of them as companies are starting to do these laboratory tests. And so uh, those products obviously will be added to list in as well. But their actual marketplace labels will finally be able to say that it can be used directly against SARS-CoV-2 instead of this EVP association with SARS-CoV-2 that's described on disinfectant list N. Um, what else to say? I think those are sort of the broad strokes of that program. John, did you have anything other than that to add to EVP?
Yeah, I'll just kind of drive home what you just said, Eric, just to say that on no label is allowed to claim anything with COVID-19, anything related to COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 right now, currently. Just want to point that out, that if you see anything in the marketplace in advertising or on a label that well, I shouldn't say that unless it's related to the emerging viral pathogens policy, but again, SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 on a label is not allowed.
John, if we see a product like that, who would we report that to?
You can you can let us know. Send it directly to me or Eric.
Okay.
So but in the near future, just to again reiterate what Eric said about the actual data, the testing that we're reviewing right now, there will be products in the very near future. Probably, I would estimate, at least from what we've approved on master labels, probably within the next month or so, that actually have SARS-CoV-2 on the label.
Okay. John and Eric, that was some great information. Our members have been looking forward to this presentation. They have emailed some questions. So are you guys ready to tackle some of the inquiries from our members?
Sure.
Absolutely.
All right, the first one, how effective is electronic spraying in enclosed spaces such as airplanes where the air is being circulated?
So, Eric, I'll start on that one maybe. Okay. So, like Eric said, any product making a public health claim, efficacy data has to be submitted and reviewed and accepted by the agency. So, along with that, um, we also historically have wanted to see if how the product is applied. So if the label has electrostatic spraying on the label, the master label that we've approved, that means there are efficacy data for, I'm talking about only public health products, of course. That means efficacy data has been submitted and approved by EPA for that pest and that method of application. So we are well aware, though, that there are lots of electrostatic spraying questions and uses going on outside in the real world. Very few labels, very few actually have electrostatic spraying as an approved method of application on the label, meaning we haven't reviewed any data, efficacy data, to support that method of application. So I would just say that, because these are public health claims, making very important public health claim, these are pathogens that are that can cause a great deal of harm to humans. We really have a high bar for them. And if the electrostatic spraying uh, method of application is not clearly spelled out on a label, we have not reviewed data for that method of application.
Okay.
Eric, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't think so. That covers it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. As we prepare to start traveling again, we have quite a few concerns about that one. This next question, with limited availability of Lysol, can hand sanitizer be used in a spray bottle as a substitute for Lysol?
I can tackle this one. So as we discussed in the pesticide registration talk, we do efficacy testing to substantiate public health claims on each product's formulation, And so that formulation encompasses everything in the product, not just the active ingredient, but also the inert ingredients as well. And the inert ingredients can vary widely. They can be things like surfactants, emulsifiers, fragrances, water, solvents, you name it. There's a huge range of different inert ingredients that can be present. And for these types of products that are intended to treat surfaces for disinfection, those inert ingredients can have an impact on how long the product lingers on the surface, how quickly the active ingredient dissipates in some cases. So they can have a strong impact on the product's efficacy, and that's why we have to have that efficacy data on each product's specific chemical formulation. And so hand sanitizer uh, wouldn't be a one for one swap for Lysol because the chemical formulations would be vastly different. I don't know. I don't even know if Lysol has a formulation that has alcohol in it like you would find in hand sanitizer. But the hand sanitizer, in addition to having alcohol in it, which is a recognized antimicrobial active ingredient, certainly, will have a lot of other things in it too, which give it that sort of the gel-like consistency, and also fragrances in it in a lot of cases. And so those different inert ingredients would have an impact on whether it be as effective as Lysol. And so we couldn't say uh, that it would be, and that we would strongly discourage anyone from thinking that they could be used interchangeably.
Okay. All right. So can I use rubbing alcohol mixed with a little dish soap for a sanitizer?
Well, I think some of the same concerns would apply. We wouldn't know without testing data what impact that dish soap was having on the potential efficacy of the formulation that you were making, because it's not a registered pesticide formulation.
All right. Now we have a member that wants to know what's the difference between wipes for surfaces and wipes for skin?
So wipes for surfaces are pesticide products. So FIFRA, our authorizing statute, authorizes EPA to regulate uh, antimicrobial products for inanimate surfaces like countertops and tables and all manner of things like that. And so wipes for surfaces would definitely be a pesticide that would fall under FIFRA that we would evaluate, and all the standards for efficacy and safety that we've talked about before would apply to those types of products. Wipes for skin, those would be regulated by the Food and Drug Administration because any of those types of treatments for the human body, with a very few exceptions, like mosquito repellents, are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. So I couldn't speak to how effective or appropriate wipes for skin would be because it'd be outside of the EPA jurisdiction. So it wouldn't be an EPA registered pesticide at that point.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
and Faye, I'll just add as well to that from when we do our reviews are again based on what we approve on the label. So our labeling will say obviously for antimicrobials only apply to certain um, hard non-porous surfaces, for example. So then our all the risks and concerns that we have for that product are based on that type of use pattern. We are not evaluating any risk to direct applications to humans. Um, and I'll also add, obviously, that we have precautionary labeling on most of our labels that actually gives the user information when there is accidental exposure to the applicator or to a bystander, for example.
All right. Now this one, it's just asking, what should I look for when purchasing an antimicrobial product? Um, So it doesn't say like what to look for on the label or effectiveness. It's just what should I look for when purchasing an antimicrobial product?
So I can start. This is a good question, but yeah, we could have a whole hour on this one. But so maybe I should say a couple of things. So if you're looking for something because of COVID-19, if you're looking something for a product that could be used to address your concerns with COVID-19, then I would say look on List N. List N has currently around 450 products that EPA has um, determined that these products can be used against SARS-CoV-2. All right. So if it's for a COVID-19 related issue, look to List N. List N is the place to go for surface disinfectants. Every product on List N, I should add, is already a disinfectant. Okay. So, but I mean, an antimicrobial in itself means that it is a pesticide. So that means it's going to have an EPA registration number. It's going to have all the precautionary statements on there that we've determined need to be there for the product to be used safely. Um, I would then, it just depends on what the person is looking for, what type of product they're looking for. If they are looking for a food contact sanitizer, for example, then look for labeling that describes that type of situation for those use sites. And for perhaps if the user knows what types of types of pathogens they're trying to address, then look for those pathogens on that label. Um, if they're looking for a higher level of control, like a disinfectant, for example, look for a product that has a disinfectant claim. If they're looking and I should also add, if they're looking for a product that will be used against viruses, it has to be a disinfectant because we don't allow virus claims on a sanitizer. Um, Eric, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that, well, I guess I will just say that we have to acknowledge that there are probably a lot of fraudulent products out there, and so the one of the first things to look for probably just to make sure that this is indeed an EPA registered antimicrobial product is that it has an EPA registration number somewhere on the labeling.
Right, and you can also check and compare that um, product label, market label with the actual master label in our database as well as a second way of kind of ensuring that it is EPA registered and that there are consistencies between the labels.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any green products if someone doesn't want to use a product that's quite as harsh for SARS-CoV-2?
I can address that one. So we we're have standards about the types of claims that registrants can make on their labels, with the concern that they might imply that they're safer than they really are if they were able to make certain claims like non-harsh or green or things of that nature. And so I don't think that we have any labels out there that could have the term non-harsh on there. But we do have a program that sort of gets at what you're referring to, I think, called Design for the Environment, where there are a list of criteria that EPA has developed about the different chemicals, the active ingredients as well as the inert ingredients that go into a product formulation that have been determined to be less caustic than some other chemicals out there. I can't remember what all the criteria for design for the environment are, but I think that's the closest thing to I think what you're referring to here. So you could we can send you a link to the Design for the Environment webpage after the presentation so that you can disseminate that so people can see what the different criteria are and what it means. And that'll be like an emblem or a label claim that will appear on the label itself. to recognize that it's been evaluated for the criteria in that program and accepted.
Okay, that would be perfect. Now we have two questions related to business activities. If I perform a disinfection service, can I leave the products for the client to use until my next scheduled visit?
So I'll try this one. It, I don't really, there's like some additional information that I think would be helpful here. Um, if the service is just providing, is giving the customer the actual product in the bottle, in the bottle as they received it, I think that's okay. If they're diluting it and then, if they have a concentrate, for example, and then they're diluting it to to actually get it to the ready to use, um, where they can apply the product, and then they're leaving the customer with that would be problematic. Um, because under FIFRA, I think we would say that's sell and distribution, and that would not be allowed. Also, we would question what labeling are they using? How are they to know if they're putting it in a secondary container and are giving the consumer the secondary container? What labeling is on that secondary container? Because most likely we haven't reviewed, EPA hasn't reviewed it or approved any labeling for that secondary container. So that's how I would answer it. If it's just the actual product, that the EPA registered product that the provider, the service provider is using, if they want to leave that with the consumer, that's probably okay. But if they're actually diluting it or changing it somehow and then giving that version of the product to the consumer, that's not acceptable.
All right, now as a business doing a disinfection service, what type of residual activity will the area remain clean? My clients want guarantees, and I don't know what to tell them.
I can jump in and tackle that one. So claims for residual activity are also something that the agency would have to evaluate to determine whether they were supported by the product formulation's efficacy itself. And so we would have a different type of study submitted to us to show that the product continued to work for whatever period of time the registrant wanted to claim it. Uh, I don't believe that there are any disinfectants that we currently have registered that have residual activity, meaning that beyond that contact time, that they continue to provide disinfection level antimicrobial control. We do have some sanitizers that are registered for residual activity. Again, sanitizers are not allowed to make claims against viruses. So that's always an important thing to keep in mind when you see these products in the marketplace. But theoretically, a company could come in and say, hey, we've got efficacy data that show that this disinfectant, when you apply it to the surface, works for up to 24 hours um, after you apply it. But and then we would allow that on the label. But currently, I don't believe there are any disinfectants that have that claim.
Right, and I'll add that, just to follow up on that, that we have been hearing a lot of residual claims in the marketplace. There's a lot of enforcement activity around them. Um, and just like Eric said, if you see any product on list N, there is not a residual claim allowed for those products. So if you see a 48-hour or 3-month claim, anything like that, that that is not approved for disinfectant level of efficacy, not approved. So there is no list in COVID-19 related product that has long-term residual activity.
All
Point
right,
that
thank
out.
All right, so two more. All right, so according to the EPA website, for the product to be on the list N, it has to demonstrate efficacy against a harder to kill virus. Who is doing this testing? Is it EPA or the registrant?
So it's the registrant that provides the test results to the agency for review. And so how that works is a lot of times the companies will contract with a third-party laboratory to do the testing, and these laboratories are generally familiar with the test parameters that EPA requires that the testing be done under. And then the registrant will submit that testing data to EPA, and the EPA scientists will evaluate whether the tests were done under the appropriate conditions and whether their outcomes uh, validate the claims that the registrants want to base on them.
All right. Right, now we have one more. I have a slide on this one that I want to share with everyone. All right, so historically, we tell people to follow the label directions on a product in their possession. So this is a master label versus distributor label question. So the master label, concentrated product, the master label lists norovirus and many other organisms. In addition, there are several different contact times listed on the label, including the longest contact time of 10 minutes. List N indicates norovirus has an organism with a contact time of 10 minutes. The distributor label, so the scenario is a custodian has a very limited distributor label, and we list the EPA registration number. The distributor label only lists athlete's foot as an organism and has a contact time of 2 minutes. So, which is correct? What should you do?
So Eric and I really like this question. We thought it was a really good question that there's not really one good answer for. So we appreciate that for putting us on the spot like that. Okay, a couple things I think to point out. So, I did go through the whole discussion of master label versus market label, but and that said, I think it's important to keep into account that the actual, from a FIFRA enforcement point of view, it's the label on the product that is the label that must be followed. Um, there can be references on that label to other materials, such as a website or a manual, and that all becomes part of the labeling as well. That comes into play. But if all we have is the product label, from a legal point of view, that is a legal label for that product, not the actual master label. That's not with the product itself. All right, so I think I wanted to start there with that explanation of kind of another nuance of master versus the actual market label. I don't know how to start answering this question. Eric, do you want to start take over or?
So yeah, I mean, I think like we said earlier, the label that you have on the container is the legally binding document, or it's probably a better term for that, but that's what the label defines the use for that product. And so even if it's a subset of what's been approved on the master label, like what's on their container, if it's just for athlete's foot, then that's what's legal for that product to be used on, uh, because that's what the supplemental distributor has chosen to have registered and put on their product. And so technically, it would be misuse for them to use it in some other manner. Um, from a practical perspective, though, I guess you could say that, all right, this is the only thing that I had available to disinfect this area, and so I know it just has athlete's foot on there, but I've referred back to the master label, and I've looked at list N, and I see that I need to have a 10-minute contact time in accordance with the norovirus directions, so I'm applying it in that manner. Um, again, I mean, technically speaking, I think that would probably be a misuse, but if you sort of had that context and rationale to explain to an enforcement entity, I think it would go a long way.
Now, would it make a difference if it was a ready to use oral wipe? I'm sorry.
I don't, I don't think it would. I don't think it would make a difference. I think just um, if so I think the point that we wanted to make here is that it is the actual container label that's the legal label for the application. And if you can follow the directions for use on that actual container label and you're actually addressing a pest that may not be called out on the label, that's okay. But once you start applying the product in a different manner than what is spelled out on that actual product market label, that's when you start running into misuse issues. But like Eric was saying, um, you know, we have list-in is pointing to certain products, and that we know on the master label are approved for certain uses that we think the product can be used, for example, for COVID-19, for SARS-CoV-2. And if it's not on the actual distributor label, it technically, as Eric was saying, it is a misuse. There's no way around it from a strict reading of the regulations. It is of FIFRA, it's a misuse. But I think because it is on list-in, and we've already kind of said that it can be used against SARS-CoV-2, and you can look at the master label and base your application and contact time on a certain pest on that master label for SARS-CoV-2. I think that would go a long way if anyone was questioning it from an enforcement standpoint.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go.
Just a little bit further and get at what I think might be implied there, the difference between an RTU and a white product. And like John was saying, we wouldn't think that there would be any difference, but I think the thinking behind that question was that when you apply an RTU product, you have to spray enough onto the surface for it to be wet for the entire contact time. But perhaps the implication of this question is that when you wipe a surface with a white product, then you're sort of done. But that's really not true. Like for white products, the same is always true that the surface has to remain wet for the entire contact time, even if that means you have to go back and use another wipe to be able to do it. So just wanted to make sure that nuance between those different types of products was clear.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Eric. I'm going to go back to one
There's a question in the chat box.
Oh, hold on 1 second, Carrie. Hold on. All right, I need to go back to a question concerning leaving a product with a customer. So I'm going to unmute. Oh, she's already unmuted. All right, go ahead, Nancy.
Hey, John and Eric, great job. This is Nancy Fetz from AAPSE Programs. I'm so glad you guys were available for this. Faye asked me. You guys are doing a great job. I just wanted to jump in on the question about whether commercial applicators can leave product. And my understanding is that they cannot leave product, either the formulated product or diluted product, based on the FIFRA definition of to distribute or sell. And that term actually excludes commercial application in the sense of holding or application of registered pesticides or use solutions by an applicator who provides a service of controlling pests without delivering any unapplied pesticide to any person so served. So just a slight update to what you said, John.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy. All right, Carrie, you had one remaining question. There are several questions in the chat, but we're almost out of time. So any question that we did not address, we will post that on the AAPSE website. But Carrie, go ahead.
No, I just didn't know if you saw the ones in the chat where someone said to your knowledge, are there any residential disinfectant products that can be used on the cloth face masks or N95 respirators? It seems like an obvious answer, but I'd like to hear your take.
John, Eric, do you want to take that one, or you want to respond and we post it on the page?
The vast majority, and I would say practically all of the disinfectants on List N are for hard, non-porous surfaces. There are only a few that are for soft, porous surfaces. And I don't know what those, I don't know if it spells out on those labels if it's for textile use. Do you know, Eric, by any chance?
You mean on the soft, non-porous
Yeah,
surfaces?
yeah.
I think it would have to talk to some extent about the different types of materials that could be
Yeah.
treated. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, on for List N, almost everything on List N is for hard, non-porous surfaces. So
All right. Guys, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. As you can tell, this is a very hot topic. So I'm sure you will be invited back again if you're available in a couple of weeks to come back and we can continue this conversation or see what's new from your office. Again, thank you so much. Thank you, AAPSE members, for joining us. The questions in the chat, we will post the responses on our AAPSE webpage and send that out, letting you know when the responses in this. Everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you, Faye, so much for putting this together.
Thank you.